Okay,
We're ready.
are we started?
Ready? Yeah.
All right, we're going to go ahead and call the meeting to order at 6 o'clock. Thank you all for coming. Welcome. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Flag is I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. I do need a motion to approve tonight's agenda. So moved. Second. We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. All right, I just want to say a few things before we get started. The purpose for tonight's meeting is to start the process of discovering solutions to reduce costs in our district and to minimize the impact on student learning. Just a few ground rules, please. Be respectful of others when they're speaking. Respect all opinions. You don't have to agree with them, but please be respectful. Focus on solutions. Let's try and stay on topic so that we can have a productive discussion. We do have a bunch of historical financial information, which is quite overwhelming. And what's glaring is our spending has increased significantly. So we need to really look at that. On that note, let's get started. Our levy dollars support, can everyone hear me, or do I need to use the microphone?
It might be better now that turned
Oh,
on.
maybe. Oh, she's,
Hello?
I think she has it turned down, so.
Where did she go?
She just walked through the door. Oh. She'll be back. I think she went to turn it up because she said she had him on low. Ooh, there it is. Okay. So our levy dollars support athletics and extracurricular, transportation, safety and security, curriculum, and teachers and support staff at around $6 million. Athletics and extracurriculars was $1,450,000. Transportation was $1 million. Safety and security was $570,000. Curriculum $500,000. So on that note, where would y'all like to start? Anybody?
So we start with transportation.
Okay. I would like to propose something though. We received a total salary by building that states that between administrator certified and classified for building total, which there's no year on this. Is this for this year or this for last year? You have no idea. It's what was presented to the clerk to post. Okay. That's not good.
What's it look like? On
It's-
page 8.
Is it page 8? Okay.
Well, they're
Oh,
written
yay.
on there.
Last
Yeah.
year, she's saying.
This is last year's? Okay. 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 Well, I didn't submit any of it. We just got stuff. So it has a salary building total of $26,644,197. I think that is a good place to start and build up a budget that's $9.5 million less than what we currently have. Do you all?
Michelle, so that's right off the bat, then we're just gonna look straight at educational staff.
No. What I'm saying is we're going to keep this amount at what it is
Okay.
and build up from it.
Absolutely the opposite of what you just said.
Yes, I'm not cutting anything from here. I'm saying if we're at $26,644,197, let's start there and build from it. Go ahead.
Porter Thompson, that is last fiscal year's numbers, so it doesn't reflect any of the steps.
We only have one.
No, we have, I think 3. Do we have 2 or 3?
Porter Thompson, that is last fiscal year numbers, so it doesn't reflect any of the steps or movement that happened for this fiscal year.
Okay. But is this somewhere that we can, is this somewhere we can start in saying that we know 26,644,197 is a base that we can build from to build the budget up, not take anybody or any money out of that 26 million is what I'm talking about. Does that make sense?
The wrong dollar amount, but yes.
I understand what you're saying. It was last year's. We weren't given this year's. There was no projected on the sheet.
Well, I'm on the computer.
We already know last year was a mess because of, we already know that last year's numbers were a mess because of the change in financing department. And I know she's worked the majority of the year trying to straighten all those out. So, I mean, we have this number, but how far are we off?
I would have to redo this entire sheet for this year. There just wasn't enough time between the last meeting and this meeting.
And that's fine, but I think going into this, I think this is where we're gonna be, right? Because we're like in the middle of the year, in the middle of the budget. So I agree, I just hope that, like, I didn't come with the expectation to have all the numbers correct. But I do think it matters that we have somewhere, so how much more? I mean, 26 million only leaves us at about 6 million from, 7 million from the actual M&O from the state. Isn't the M&O from the state 33, almost 34 million?
Did anybody get?
What do you?
I'm just wondering if we could do 5% one time, 10%. So that's another 2,664,000. Yeah.
On an estimate, Jessica, if we increase this by 10%, do you think that would be closer to what we anticipate expending for this year? Okay. Go ahead.
Can you just clarify again which staffing that specifically?
It's
started
for
with?
every building we have for education. It's Apple, Betty Kiefer, Garwood, John Brown, Spirit Lake, Timberlake Middle, Timberlake High, Twin Lakes, Lakeland Middle, Lakeland High School, and Mountain View.
So not specifically buildings, but if it was.
It's our buildings in total.
But administration certified and classified as
Yes.
part of those? Okay,
Yes.
I only heard a couple of them, so just wanted to make sure.
Not a problem.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I'll talk on a second here. Just so I can understand, the levy was a specific plan. Since that plan was rejected, we aren't bound by anything. You can cut anywhere you want. Is
Correct.
that right? Okay, so
Correct.
there's everything's open, not the items that are.
True.
Okay.
My biggest concern is that we have a lot of people that are terrified that they're not going to have a job next year. Fair to be concerned. Finding 9.52 million isn't going to be finding a needle in the haystack. We're going to have to cut things back. But there are other areas that we have expensed a tremendous amount in, and trying to get a handle on that is what we need to do. And I believe that I'd like to make good on the promise that we're not just starting at teachers and saying, okay, we're gonna just cut back and make classrooms huge. The levy did support 6 million for teaching and support staff, but I'm hoping we can find that somewhere else in the budget to make the reductions there and not on our buildings with teachers and support staff.
And this was clarifying that is no longer relevant. That's out the window.
Correct.
We do whatever we want.
Right, we need to find 9.52 million, or we need to find what we can live within with the funding that we do receive from the state. Okay. So, what is that?
It's 29,308,000.
29,308,617. Okay, that's good. All right. So you, Mr. Trustee Quimby,
Yeah,
want to start on transportation?
yep.
Okay, let's look there.
So we double bus kids, which I know people don't like the idea, but that started in COVID, right?
No,
No.
it started the 2019, 2020 school year, so the year of COVID, but
Right.
before we got hit with COVID.
Right. So we go down to one bus, one route, and we start doing rideshare pickup points. Instead of going down every single road in North Idaho picking up a couple kids. Our mileage is 3,100 miles a day on our buses.
So you're saying you'd like us to go down to one bus, one busing route, single routing, with rideshare pickup spots?
Yes.
Okay.
So, Board Chair Thompson, I don't know if this is
Yep,
working.
it is.
If we do that, we are required by law to provide payment in lieu of transportation, so we would have to pay every family, there's a flat rate, monthly flat rate, and then mileage to and from their home to the pickup point. So it doesn't, while it still may save us money, I just want to make sure we have all those pieces of understanding.
Well, why do we have to?
Right, but,
Why? I don't understand.
so.
It's the
because
state
law
law.
says if you're within a mile and a half, then you can walk. Anything after that, we have to bus. But what Dave's talking about, say for instance on Bruner, instead of having 6 stops on Bruner, just a stop at Clagstone, a stop at Old 95, a stop is what he's saying, instead of stopping at every driveway, you know, or going down every dirt road, look at transportation and find a central hub where those families can group to pick kids up and drop kids off. Is
Yeah.
that a better description? For the people
Yeah.
that I'm speaking of?
Yep. So, anybody who's outside that mile and a half at that point, then we would owe that to.
No, we're not talking about that. The same kids we're picking up now continue to pick up, but for instance, instead of stopping at all 25 driveways on Bruner, we would stop at one central location, making sure that we can still do it within the mile and a half.
Okay.
Yeah.
When he said rideshare, my understanding was like we would have collection points where everybody would collect at Super One in Apple and we'd pick up there. That's what I understood.
No.
I don't understand why, if busing's not required, why are we gonna pay people to transport their kids?
The law says we have to. If they're without
Beyond.
beyond a mile and a half, we have to provide the transportation or pay them $10 plus whatever the IRS current mileage is. That's the law.
Idaho Code 331503.
Okay. Go ahead. Oh, wait, hold on just a sec. Hold on. And y'all can either raise your hands or give a shout out that you have something to contribute, because we do want to hear from you throughout this whole process. Go ahead.
Mr. Quimby, I live in Spirit Lake East. The buses don't run there because the roads are awful. They're not maintained by the county, they're maintained by our HOA. And so all of our parents have to have our children come out to the road to be picked up and that's where they're dropped off and they have to walk in. If you were asking that of every neighborhood, that is impossible. My daughter has to walk over 2 miles to get to the road. I'm not having her do that. And so there's other neighborhoods that are just as much. There is a current neighborhood right now. I had a kid a couple of years ago that got dropped off in Cutoff, and they had 2 miles to walk from where their drop-off was to their home because the bus couldn't get down the road. So your central location place or a mile and a half, that doesn't work in every neighborhood. I don't understand how we can make that work.
Right, and in those instances where it wouldn't work, obviously it won't work. But in the meantime, I still think we have to look at everything, and I'll give Bruner Road again as an example. Instead of stopping at every driveway, stop at major corners. And you're right, some of them it just won't work because they're dirt roads, non-maintained roads, too far out.
But even on the highway, your mile and a half of a spot, some of those kids are still going to be out. That bus still has to go to another spot.
Right.
And it's gonna pick up maybe one kid.
We're
So that's why
saying-
I'm saying that's, your logistics are gonna have to be worked out really well for that.
What I'm saying is, don't change the current plan. The bus would still drive the same road, you know, but instead of turning off to go, you know, half a mile to pick up this kid, the kid can come a half a mile to a central location. So that kind of thing.
There's,
Go ahead.
Yeah, I appreciate the conversation on transportation. I think any of these conversations are gonna come with pros and cons.
Absolutely.
And with the levy, I think that having that piece of what is the weight of each of these decisions is important. So just voicing from multiple angles. One, there's that weight that I think is obvious to people, is that we're putting elementary kids with our secondary kids. As a parent, that concerns me. From the angle as an employee who has watched those videos, it concerns me. Looking at the stability of our district and what we're trying to do, which is, it starts with getting those kids on that bus and into our doors to support them. Going to a single route, I do think saves us some money. I don't think as explicit as it cuts it straight down in half. I have concerns for our busing department, because it does cut down their time, and somebody brought up recruitment and retainment. Last time we had to look at that with our teaching staff as well as with the support staff. Retaining our bus drivers is a concern. So I just want to make sure that each of those angles, when people are weighing those decisions, that we bring those to light. People have to, we're the largest employer in the community as well, at varying levels. And so I want to honor that work that they're putting in too. If we're cutting back those hours, we may have a hard time where people are having to, in a time period of inflation, rightfully go, say, I need to leave and go somewhere else. And then we're at a point that we actually don't have a fleet to run and get this access. So just pointing out some of those various levels of the impacts of that change in busing, I think it's a really valid one to look at, but I do think there's pros and cons on it. So just voicing each of those.
No, I do hear what you're saying. I would like to point out, though, that it's taken 4 years to grow the budget $1 million in transportation. That's astronomical. I mean, I know gas has gone up and gone down slightly and then gone back up and then gone down. I mean, that's astronomical. So we have to get a handle on it. And the increase was based on the information we were provided with. To me, it's because we took on so many full-time employees and double routed, which I do believe everybody deserves to earn a livable wage. But I know prior to the 2019-2020 school year, we did single routes and we had bus drivers and it worked. So I hear what you're saying, but I don't think we're so far from the past that we can't regroup some of what we had back then when we could manage it financially. So, yeah.
Bob, may I?
Oh, go ahead, Bob.
There's one other aspect that needs to be kept in mind. We're reimbursed from the state at the rate of 75% of actual cost. So if we reduce cost,
It's actually 60 to 70.
okay, I just got corrected, 60 to 70%. But at any rate, the point is that if you reduce cost, you're also going to reduce your revenue stream. So the savings may not be as great as what you think.
A big cost for transportation is transporting sports because we don't get reimbursed by the state of Idaho for that. I've been in contact with neighboring districts and they charge their schools a lot more than we do. And Post Falls' transportation budget it's even across the board because of how much they charge for that.
From my understanding, the reason why we were having trouble, or why we also went to double busing, was so that we could get that retention, because a lot of the baby boomers that were filling our positions as bus drivers are now retiring even out of part-time work, and it's hard to find people that just want to work those hours. And so that was enticing because they could actually make a living off of that and receive benefits. And so because of our population and our demographics, it's very difficult to find people that are willing to take on those single routes and have that huge gap in their day, not get benefits, and not make very much money. And so we're gonna run into a lot of issues there. And that was a big why, from my understanding, why we went to the double routing. Plus, if you're looking at our infrastructure, that's gonna be an absolute nightmare with traffic if we were to do that. If you look at all the schools starting within a short time of one another, I mean, drive in any of our neighborhoods when elementary gets out, in any of our neighborhoods, if you add elementary, secondary, middle school, all getting out of school within 10, 15 minutes of one another, it's going to be crazy with our infrastructure. It can't handle it.
Based on the 3,100 miles a day, I'm estimating we're spending about $375,000 a year on oil, fuel. So even if we can save 10, 20% of that, that's still, we're not moving the needle at all. So should we start talking about things that move the needle? I mean, okay, maybe we can save 50 grand. If we're trying to come up with 9 million, 50 grand is not where we need to be spending our time.
Right, but according to what we were asking the constituents for, that $1 million was for transportation. So we need to get $1 million out of transportation. And we need to figure out how to do that. And when in a four-year period, we have increased the spending $1 million, we need to look at what we did 4 years ago and see if we can go back to that. And I realize that, you know, the comment was that it's just gonna be chaos and we can't do it because of the infrastructure, but we just did it not that long ago. So I don't think we're so far down the road that we're not gonna be able to figure it out. I just think it's gonna take some ingenuity and really thinking about what's the best way to navigate this for the students and the safety and all of that. Go ahead.
So I have a question, and I think you touched on, and it ties into what he was saying. You guys have line items on how much money was allocated to each one of those things from the levy. Is that broken out into further line items of what $1 million went to?
Nope.
So is there a correlating list of what has increased over the last 4 years in each of those and where that money has been spent over the last 4 years?
That's kind of what we're working on and figuring out.
Okay.
That's
So there's not that
why we're
line
out
item
here.
broken out of.
Well, what we received was our audited expenses, salaries, benefits, purchase services, materials, supplies and materials, and capital outlay and insurance. So we received those sort of line items, I guess. We've got columns. That's what we received. And so just in looking that, I'm looking at the audited expenses.
Okay.
And, you know, for last year, the audited expenses for transportation was $2,784,275. The audited expenses for the 2019-2020 school year was $1,802,155. And in all fairness, because we did have COVID and we were closed for 3 months, in 2018-2019 it was just $1,734,591. So there wasn't, those
That
3
was
months.
single routing.
Yeah, and that was single routing as opposed to double routing that was increased and we were closed for 3 months.
But even if you look at the 2020, 2021
Yeah.
year when we were double busing and we weren't out of school for 3 months.
Right.
It was $1,855,000. So we're up almost $1 million over that year.
But we
Right.
don't know where that extra $1 million went to.
Just salaries, benefits, purchase services, supplies, materials, capital outlay, and insurance. Go ahead.
Yeah, I did the math on his math, and even if we figure diesel went up $1.25 a gallon since last year, which it was more than that.
Okay.
That's over $250,000. You're trying to figure out how it went up. The diesel costs alone are a quarter of that budget.
Okay.
Which we can't control.
You're correct.
So we're looking to save money, but we're looking to save money on something we can't control.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, if And all of this is on the website, right?
Yes. There.
Okay, so everybody can look underneath the agenda and look at all this. So if we went back, we'll say 18-19, which was single routing. We had 61 staff. We had 20 full-time and 41 part-time, which is almost 20 less, but yet we were $1.3 million more. So I think the single bus routing, even if we look at the purchase services haven't changed that much. Supplies and material haven't changed that much. Salaries and benefits haven't. And that's part of where we're stuck too, is the state pays us the state wage. We pay competitive wage to keep everybody from going across the line or to another district. So that's a huge shortfall, huge. And that's part of what the other $6 million was for. So if we backed up and just put everybody where the state says, right, because the state says you only need this many teachers, this many principals, this many librarians, they look at all that and then that's the bucket of money they give us based upon what the law says. So if we looked at that and we went directly on what the state pays us for, that would not look pretty. So the thing is we've got to cut somewhere, or we have to literally make the district reflect the money that the state is giving us. And that's a huge shortfall in staff, in transportation, in funding, in everything. So I know what everybody's saying about here, but I mean, where else should we look if we're not, if transportation isn't a good spot to look, where else should we begin?
We're not saying it's not a good spot to start. But what I'm saying is, we're trying to cut something, and she's asking, why did it go up $1 million? Well, I'm telling you, you got over $250,000 just in diesel costs alone. That's where some of it went up at.
Yeah,
I'm not saying that's all of it,
yeah,
but that's a good chunk of it.
Yeah, it was actually salaries and benefits is where it went up.
So the diesel didn't go up?
Well, it fluctuated. You can see the fluctuation, but we had an 18.64 increase, 16.58% increase, 17.18%, and most of that is reflective of just the salaries and benefits. So
I won't argue that one bit.
yeah, and you're right. The fuel that then we, yeah, that was another thing that we tried to get our hands around.
The thing is, those supplies and materials went down by $20,000. So I'm not sure how we manage that. Is that not our fuel? Or what's included in the supplies and materials for transportation?
Jessica, what's provided in the supplies and materials for transportation? What are those types of expenses? Okay. And it'd be good to know what the purchased services are as well.
What about the growth of the number of students and things that have come into our cities? Isn't that costing more too? I mean, how many more kids are you busing?
That's a good question. We don't get that information.
Yeah, they need a microphone. So I can walk it up on.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
We're going to be in trouble for mileage.
What about the amount the cities have grown and the different neighborhoods you're having to go to? And the number of kids you're picking up, hasn't that grown? And would that contribute to the amount of money that's been spent more than it was 4 years ago? Because there's been a lot of growth.
You're right. Where is the paper that has some student numbers? There was. Yeah.
Super close.
Close mic.
Okay, I said that there were the number of students and the number of neighborhoods and the number of growth in our cities has grown so much that some of the costs could have come from the number of kids that are being picked up and the number of places we're having to stop because of that. That could be where the increase is too. That's something you can't take away either.
We would have to know what our routes have, how much have our routes changed?
So that, I was gonna say, so that is very true for Brookshire neighborhood, for example. When they first started building, we only had to send one middle school, high school bus, and one elementary bus there. But now there's so many kids that they don't all fit on one bus. So for routes, we have to look at how many miles they travel and how much time and how many kids they can pick up. We can't just send one bus out to Brookshire because a quarter of the neighborhood would be on there and the route would be 10 miles and it'd be 20 minutes, right? So we have to kind of balance all those things. So now we have, say, 4 or 5 routes going out there to separate those students. And another thing you gotta think about with busing, we have to count those kids as bus drivers when they're getting on and off the bus. So if we have 40 kids getting on the bus, that's a lot of little ones. If their ball goes underneath the bus, we can't keep track of that many kids at a time. So we try to make those stops smaller so we can keep track of those kids. So that explains why mileage has gone up too, because we can't just send 2 routes out there anymore. Just for Brookshire alone, I think off the top of my head, we have at least 4 to 6 buses going out there, just for the sheer amount of kids.
I have a question, because it seems like we're just gonna keep talking in circles. I talk really loud, but I sent out a proposal to, I don't even. This is working? I sent a proposal of maybe having each department, every single building come up with where maybe we can make some cutbacks. And so that then we can all bring it to the table and say, okay, Lakeland High School, through attrition, through looking at things that are must-haves versus nice-to-haves, we can cut back $350,000. Maybe the middle school at Lakeland can cut back $100,000. Maybe our elementaries can each cut back $50,000. We can come up with ways from each department, each building, where we can make some cutbacks. I guess the question is, are we willing to then run a levy at, this is the bare minimum of, so we can keep doing the best job that we possibly can as a school district, this is the number. I mean, is that feasible? Are you guys willing to support that? I think that's the question that we all have. Can cutbacks be made? Absolutely. But can $9 million be made? I don't know. That looking through everything. And so, wouldn't it be more beneficial if we were all to come to the table from each building, each group, and come up with a game plan and say, hey, and then maybe that looks like we're going to now propose a $7 million levy versus a $9 or almost $10 million levy a year.
I don't disagree that that's a great starting point. The problem is we got to get moving now. We got to make some decisions pretty quickly. Or we're gonna have people freaking out because they
But
don't, they're unsure.
We could make that happen out of our building within a couple weeks. I mean,
Okay, bring it.
I can tell you right now,
Yeah.
looking at our numbers and our spreadsheets, there are areas where we could cut back at Lakeland High School because of who is retiring and who is leaving already, that would save the district a good chunk of money. So
Perfect.
if everyone were to do that, we could reduce the levy, but we would have to know that you're gonna be able to rerun it, that we're gonna rerun it, and then also have another game plan if it doesn't pass while rerunning it.
That's one interesting approach, but just to put it in perspective, if you divide $9.25 million by 11 schools, that gives you the number that each school would have to try to reach in order to take care of the entire $9+ million deficit.
$865,000.
Or smaller schools would have a lesser number and larger schools would have a larger number, but together they still have to come to over $9 million. And that's almost $1 million per school.
I spoke at the last meeting, and I think you guys are making great points. We had a lot of people from the community speak to the board, and the board can't react back to that. I think it's very responsible that we're looking at the numbers and we're trying to make the best where we can. That's what we should be doing anyway. So you guys are doing a great job with that, getting that started. I would like to hear maybe the board's overall goal is, can we make some cuts? Maybe like Mr. Blocker was talking about, try to do the best we can to make cuts and go from there. And then the possibility of rerunning the levy at a lesser amount so that we can also keep our staff and our students and our programs as well. I guess I would like to know, now that we have an opportunity for, what's the board's vision? What are we hoping to do? Are we hoping to cut $9.5 million with no possible chance to rerun a levy? Or are we looking at possibly cutting $3 million and then going back to our constituents with another levy at $6 million? Or whatever those numbers are gonna be. I'd kind of like to know the board's direction so that we can help out the best way possible in that regard.
In my opinion, I think we just need to tighten up our belt, because I've talked to a lot of people in my zone and basically they're barely getting by. And so then they look at the district and they see us not cutting back or doing anything, so then they're pissed off, you know? And so I think if we tightened up our belt and show the public that we're gonna tighten up spending and cut back some stuff, I think that's an option. You know, but we have to prove to them that we're doing it.
And we should, that's being fiscally
You know,
responsible.
and another thing is, you know, we got patrons that drive by our buildings and they don't like the looks of them, you know? And if I was a taxpayer and I would drive by Lakeland High School and there's weeds everywhere, I might not vote for a levy because you don't take care of it, you know? And that's not the teacher's fault or anybody else's fault. But, you know, we need to take care of our buildings so people know that we care, you know? I mean, we got, just looking at, we got a BMO, what is the BMO again? Yeah, so we spend $86,000 in 1 month on credit stuff. Okay, we got this OTEC thing. What's OTEC?
Depends on, it's on company, is that the class-wise?
Yeah.
That's the software that we use in the classrooms to monitor what the students are viewing on their Chromebook during
Okay.
instructional periods.
But I'm just saying, we got $16,000 on that. Then we got thinking maps for $32,000. It starts adding up. ASA, 2,300. BMO, 86. We got cell phones that are going out for people in the district. I mean, everybody has a cell phone. We don't need to be purchasing people's cell phones. That's, you know, it's $2,700 a year. We have storage containers that we rent. We rent storage containers at maintenance. That's $5,300 a year. Copier cost, it's like $58,000 a year. And it goes on and on and on. And it's just like, do we need all this stuff? Or do you need jobs? You know? You need it? Well, okay.
Okay,
I think you're right, though. I think that's a conversation. I agree. I think there's some of those things that, yes, the class-wise that we absolutely have to do that because staff is responsible for 100% of what their kids are doing all day long. And if we don't have class-wise, that's impossible for us to do that. And
Well-
so that's a place to start, but you're right.
I mean, it's just subscriptions after subscriptions.
right, but for all of you that think we should just run right back out and run the levy, my frustration is the last 4 times we've run the levy, the very first time, it fails. And it's, you guys come back to us and say, please, let's rerun it again. We didn't do enough. And then we're like, okay, this voter turnout was so significant, we have to listen. I don't think if we're able to find $2 million, that's gonna appease the taxpayer. Saying, oh, look, they're trying, it's 7 million instead of 9 million. We seriously have to figure out, how did we grow so much with what we're producing? I mean, it's just, there is more, and I get it, each building should be looking at, you know, how is attrition gonna affect my building? I think that's great, but there's more. I mean, we have to look at facilities, we have to look at transportation, we have to look at the district office expenses. We have to look at it all. It's just not each these 11 buildings responsibility to come up with 9.52 million.
I think she was talking about departments and including each building as a department, because she was talking about transportation and everybody. But I really think that we need to look at what does this truly look like if we don't have this levy. I am for rerunning at a lower rate. I will say that right now. I will tell you that. That is. But I think we have to show this is what it looks like without it, and this is what it looks like with it.
We have to be honest, because when we said that this levy was being spent for these things, and now we're saying that these aren't necessarily things we're gonna cut, athletics, co-curriculars, those type of things, this time around, if that's what we're saying, then we definitely need to follow through.
Well, they have to be cut. Here's the thing.
Well, we've been told that athletics won't be cut.
Yeah, oh no, we have to, I mean, the thing is, nobody pays us for that. We don't get paid from the state, we get no money for athletics at all. So if they don't give the levy, there's no money for athletics.
I have a question, just like a clarifying question, Jessica can probably answer this. Are we really trying to cut 9.5 million, or are we cutting less because of the property tax relief? Won't we be getting money from the state, so,
we only get that if
Not
we have
if
the
we
levy.
don't have a levy. There's no property tax relief because we're not collecting taxes for the school district.
So it does come through as facility funds. We are only allowed to use it like we use a plant facility levy. We wouldn't be allowed to use it for salaries and benefits, but we would be able to use it for building maintenance. So even though the 2.3 is offsetting the current supplemental levy this year, any money that we receive next year related to that school district facility funds would go directly into an account just to spend on facilities.
So we're getting property tax relief.
So this is the first time anybody.
Yeah, no one's ever told us this.
So can you clarify?
Because we have a supplemental levy in place, that's what it goes to first.
It was on our levy
Yep.
flyer, related to House Bill 521. It is an Idaho state statute, Idaho code, I referenced it in one of the levy videos that was done.
The 2.3, what is 2.3
out there for everybody's reading.
What is 2.3?
The 2.3 million is the property tax relief that we're receiving this fiscal year that is offset on our L2 to reduce the amount of supplemental levy that our taxpayers are taxed on. Right, so the state gives us that money. The law says that we have to use it towards a supplemental levy, a plant facility levy, a bond, and if we don't have any of those things, then we can use it for facilities. We cannot use it for salaries and benefits.
Absolutely.
But that's
Could I clarify?
something we're gonna get every year?
Yes.
Okay.
Do you have an estimate on what that number's gonna be for the next year?
We do not receive it until after the end. Like last year's was 1.7.
Okay,
This
so-
year's 2.3. Next year could be 1 million. It really depends on the state and their revenues.
State allocates.
And it's based on this.
See, that's one of the problems we have. It's really difficult to decipher some of this information because we have incomplete information. But just to clarify for a moment, let's assume that we ran a levy for $2.3 million. Every dollar of that would come under tax relief. So it would cost taxpayers here no dollars. Now, we could use that as a starting point and say, you know, what can we afford to do beyond that in order to sustain a really quality educational program, because that's what I'm about. I don't think we can bleed all over the place trying to cut things in order to have a mediocre educational program. That's not fair to our kids.
I'm sorry, I still need to go back to the fact that a grand majority of you didn't understand this. I'm used to moms that just was campaigning for the levy, and I knew that. This is why we're in something like this.
No.
This was unaware.
You misunderstood. No, we were trying to clarify. She just said 2.3, and I said 2.3 what? Percentage or million? We understand the tax relief, but it's only for the facilities going forward if we don't have a levy.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, but if we had the levy, then it would take away from the 9.5.
Right.
But a lot of taxpayers really understood that either, because it's a very complicated thing.
Yeah, they
do. But, I mean, I think that the whole idea that we don't, or not all on the same page is one of the biggest problems.
Yeah, well, I think
I
you're
would agree.
misunderstanding. We understood that. I was trying to get her to clarify the percentage or a dollar amount.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think one big thing, getting information out is one of the biggest things, one of the biggest barriers, especially we know our north precincts are the ones that overwhelmingly vote no. That's where I live. Every single one I've talked to that did vote no was a lack of information. They had the information wrong when they voted no. We know we had a very politically charged election this year. We had a lot of voter turnout. We had a lot of people that were just suffering from inflation and taxes and everything going up. They barely get by. So when they get to who knows how many people actually read the entire thing of what the levy was and just said, oh, the school wants more money? No, like I just spent 4 years doing it. No, not doing it. And they just voted no across the entire board. The voters have said no in the past, and when we rerun it, it passes every time, right? So I think we do need to cut money. We ran it this year for the same amount as last time, correct? The revised one?
Yeah.
So we didn't show any sign of good faith to the community that we're trying to tighten our belts. If we do it at a revised amount, get the information out there that says, here's what we're doing, here's what we're gonna do over the next couple years while we try to reduce this even further, I think it's a sign of good faith to the community that we're actually trying to reduce that cost. And we need to actively work on doing that. So that next year when we go, or next 2 years when we go out there to do it again, we say, it was $7 million last year, it's $5 million this year. We just keep working it down and show that good faith that we're actually trying to get down to the number. We might not be able to cut all $9 million this year, but just show that we're trying, and that will get a lot of people on the side, along with getting the information out there, because I believe that was a big issue, of showing what we need to do as a sign of good faith to the community. Because up here, and especially out towards, there's a lot of people that don't have kids in the district. They don't have a vested interest. They have the properties that are worth more money, so they're shelling out more than anybody else, and they have no vested interest in the district.
Right.
Those are the people we need to reach out to. And if it's setting up tables outside of Super One, setting up tables outside of Miller's, whatever we need to do to hand out that new information, including the information that we just heard about apparently, then that's what we need to do. And I'm very invested in this community, and I have numerous friends that are also invested in this community. We'll be the ones sitting at that table. I don't care. But I have kids at every level of this school district, elementary, middle school, high school. I don't want them to have to sacrifice their education or their school experience because we can't get a levy passed that we need. So does it need to be a reduced amount? Absolutely. But do I think we should at least try to get that reduced amount passed? Yeah. And I also think we do need to show what does this look like at $0 if we get $0.
Right.
This is what it's going to be. Versus if we can get a $6 million levy passed or a $7 million levy passed, here's what we can save, and we'll continue to work on progress in the future. Right. So that 2 years from now when we ask again, it will be less.
Right.
And that's...
We can't, I know everybody wants us to tell the public, if you don't give us the levy, this is what, we can't legally do that. That's the problem. You guys can.
But we can, no, you can't, but we can show.
We're not Coeur d'Alene or Post Falls.
We
We have a model that works, like the entire Snohomish County has figured out how to pass levies. Coeur d'Alene and Post Falls gives people a plan, absolutely, of what the world will look like with a levy and without. And they have overwhelmingly figured out that this is how you communicate it to voters, so that voters feel safe and comfortable voting, and they know exactly what they're voting for. You are not giving them transparency, and you're not giving them enough information.
People seem people also seem to think it's new money that you're asking for $9 million more, and not the money that you use, and they're not realizing that every 2 years you're voting for the same money. It's not that you're asking for the people I've talked to thought they didn't spend it right the first time. Why are they asking for 9 more? No, it's the same $9 million you're asking for, and they're not seeing it. It's if we can show that, it would be helpful.
The story I've been telling my friends when I talk about this, if you go to the doctor and you go for your checkup and you come out and say, all right, look, here's some medication. It's going to make you a little bit sick. it's $120 a month. Do you want it? That's the question that this says. The discussion isn't, okay, what happens if you don't take it? Oh, well, stuff starts falling off. Well, that's a completely different scenario than what's in black and white on this vote. This is somewhat, it's a harsh term, but this is deceptive compared to what the reality is.
That's all we can do. That's what I'm trying to say. This board, that is all this board can do. We cannot you guys can go tell the people. This board cannot legally put out a piece of paper and say, if you do not give us the levy money, you have no sports, you cut $1 million transportation, you cut $1 million. We have to give them legally what the levy funds. That's all we can do. The board cannot do that. You guys can. All of you can do it. Us 5 cannot do that.
We can build a budget that shows what it's going to be without the 9.52
Right.
and build another budget that shows what it would be. So in essence, yes, we can. We can.
That's what I was.
Right, and that's what we talked about before. We did.
Really loud, so what I want to know is, I've been here for 30 years, and our levies passed with flying colors for many years until this current board. And I want to know what this board, yes, they did. They did pass for many, many years. And this current board, how when did the first levy scale start failing?
Before we were on the board.
Yeah.
No. Yeah, it did.
No.
No,
Yeah.
that's not
That
true.
was before you guys were on the board?
Before we got on the board.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I just think we need to look at how this board is communicating with the leaders of this school district. I think there's been a lack of communication, and I think the communications are just like, I think the transparency is not there. Any more transparency.
Well, and I appreciate what you're saying. I would like to state that the demise of the levy started when there was an attempt to pass a $70 million bond that the community was not educated on. Or 70. Right, but it didn't pass because there was not enough information that was given out. 70 billion. I understand that, but the lack of transparency that came out with the attempt to pass that $70 billion bond, or million, was it million or billion? I don't know.
Million.
It was million. Because of that lack of transparency, people were just floored that we were trying to sneak that through. I wasn't on the board at that time. That's what prompted me to run for the board, because I thought, how can we be going after $70 million without telling the public anything about it? But from that point, the levies have started to fail every time we run them, with the exception of the
Not every time.
the plant facilities, because that one's at $1 million whatnot. So those ones don't seem to fail, but the supplementals have failed the last, I believe, 3 times or 4 times.
No, only one
Yeah,
time.
they have.
Only one.
Go ahead.
Have you ever told the community is that possible? Like, if we voted no, why? And then you have a choice that they can pick from, just so that we can, give them a voice. This is why we're saying no, and then work from there. Is that possible?
I know very much. Well, in talking with my constituents, and I did join, not this levy, but the one prior, I went to the meetings in my area, spoke to the patrons, I did an outreach with the superintendent, I talked to people on the phone, I sent people emails, they email me. There's a couple of things. I have heard that people think we're too heavy in
Administration.
in admin, that they want to see less money, but they want to see cuts. That's it. That's the only reason. They said bring a lower amount, go tighten your belt some more, and go from there.
Isn't it true that administration dollars come from the state? Can somebody answer that question?
Well, we hire more than what the state funds. Yeah. So.
Percentage on that?
What was that?
A percentage on that? How much is funded by the state? How much more than we pay?
I don't have a percentage in front of me, and we have to split it out, but in the IDAPA rule, it'll tell you exactly one counselor for every 500 students, one principal for every, I forget, hundreds or 1,000 students. And so the state does have those guidelines that it goes by for funding, so whatever that is. But, you know, we always, there again, we're trying to do the best for kids, right? If it takes that many people, it takes that many people, but they
want to keep that.
Right, yeah, and that's what we're trying to do, you know, in doing this.
Chair Jones, the very first meeting that we had, didn't you start out the meeting by saying 86% of our budget is salaries and benefits? So if we have to cut by 25 or 30%, how do we do that? Can you say that?
Yes.
Trustee
Yeah,
Jones?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, she was just correcting herself.
Yeah, around 85%, using round numbers, around 85% amounts to salary and benefits for all personnel across the board. So that leaves 25% or 15% of the total general fund budget for everything else that we buy, supplies, consumables, heat, lights, water, sewer, on and on and on. And so, you know, how do you, and if you look at it in the reverse and take $9 million out of our current budget, it's around 22%, I think, something like that. But at any rate, you know, those two numbers can't come together. You can't eliminate paying the water bill in order to, you know, do something else and make it work. You have to go to staff. There's no way to make it work without going to staff. Now, I would support what Trustee Bain has said. I really believe, before I go there though, I just want to point out a couple of things. Sometimes I think, you know, we're given a little bit of a bad rap in that we've not made an effort to try to keep a responsible, conservative fiscal budget. We have. This would be for the 6th year that we ran the levy for the same amount. Well now, you know, how much inflation has there been over the last 6 years? So we have eaten that inside of our budget. So we've actually reduced each year in that respect. Plus the fact that, you know, we're not currently running a plant facilities levy. So we've foregone that because we felt like the load might be too much for the taxpayers. Year after year, when the opportunity was there, we did not run an emergency levy, which the law allows. When we have an increase in the number of students, there's a provision in the law that we can automatically apply a tax to help support those new students. And the board has religiously said, no, we're not going to do that without a vote of the people. So, you know, we really have tried to be responsible in spite of the fact that sometimes people think that's not the case. Now, can we do better? Sure, you can always do better. And I truly believe, you know, you can cut around the edges, but you can't do what this situation has given us and continue to operate a successful program. Just not possible.
So, couple of things. One thing that I see happening is that we're getting really into the details of the different numbers, and I appreciate that, and I also fear that we can spend 40 minutes just talking through transportation and understanding it, but we also have the experts to say, one idea is to go to single routing, when we put this next budget together, give us what that looks like, and that we trust that those individuals have the information to analyze that at all points. Same in each department, like others brought up, and said, give us those points, show us what it looks like. I would empower you to come with those 3 levels at a quicker space of what does our district look like with this 9.25? What does our district look like once our staffs and our departments have cut these pieces, whatever that number is at, and then we hear those from them and we bring it together. And an honest reality, because our district does not look pretty with the 9.25 cut, and I have sat in many positions in many spaces, sorry, 5'2", that I've understood the intricacies of this budget at a level, and I've sat at different meetings with many of you as well, and I believe that you guys understand that impact too, that it doesn't look pretty with that cut. It's just not there. we need to see that at such a quick rate and getting down and having these conversations line item by line item. We're not gonna get there at the rate that it's needed. The other point that we need to focus and remember, because it sucks to be honest, is that the state is hamstringing us. We don't get to rerun this even if we put that out there until May. And people will make a decision before then. And if we don't have what those three options look like, I am making a decision as a parent. I'm like my own kid, ask me to be here. And I'm making a decision as a staff member who has that pride in our schools. And I believe that everybody that is sitting at this table and that is in this room has that same level. And if we do not have those three levels quickly and with faith that what people are saying we need is what we need, and here's what we're willing to give because it will come with sacrifice, every single one of those line items that we will have to cut will have an impact. So when we say we're looking for zero impact things, there is no such thing in this district because every single thing touches a kid, no matter if it is directly or indirectly. So I just really empower that we say, we ask the departments, we bring it to the table, they're going to be a draft within the next month. It has to come forward, and it has to come in a quicker way, and it needs to be the only priority. And the only way we're going to get to that is to empower the people that understand the details in those departments. But if we sit here and go through it line item by line item, people like myself and others in this district are going to make decisions as parents, as staff members, and as community members about what's best for them and their livelihoods as well. So it's just really important that we give that power and we hear it from people because we're making decisions all in. And we're making decisions sitting in these seats. And that also impacts the students.
Thank you.
Just some information for the board. Should the board decide to run a levy at a lesser rate in May, that resolution language is due to the county clerks in March, which means we have to start having those conversations in January so that we can get it to legal and then to the board for approval. So to Laura's point, if that is something you're going to consider, it does speed up our timeline significantly. The district leadership team, so the administrators and directors at the district office and the administrators today sat in a room for 8 hours brainstorming ways to reduce the budget. So we have done that work that Laura's talking about. Once Jessica has an opportunity to put numbers to those things, we will definitely be able to bring those to the board as things to consider.
Okay, well, based on that, I'm not really sure who all was sitting in, you said an 8-hour meeting? How long?
It didn't start out to be an 8-hour meeting, but that's how long it ended up taking us today.
Okay,
Just because there is so much concern.
Then, based on Laura's input, I think we need to have safety and security. We need to review that. Our 5 armed district safety specialists need to look at everything that's going out the door there and come up with a way for it to come back. Transportation, we need to have significant cuts there. Facilities, that department, we need to figure out what we can run the district on. I know apparently over the summer we were on a skeleton crew, and nothing was accomplished, so we don't want to go that route, but we need to figure out what it's going to take to run that department effectively. Same with all the buildings. They should come forward with what they can do. The district office needs to look at what it can do as well, where it can cut back, possibly, positions or expenses. The tech department needs to do that as well because their numbers have increased significantly. And then athletics and extracurricular, the secondary schools need to determine how we can cut there, what it would look like for a pay-to-play, what it would look like for this district not to fund extracurricular and athletics at all, and how are we going to proceed forward with that? Because there are a lot of ideas. I mean, when I'm hearing that the Booster Club specifically at Lakeland has tried repeatedly to help and help and help, but yet there's obstacles in the way. That just doesn't make any sense to me. We also need to look at curriculum, including all the online stuff that we have, because this board has asked repeatedly, based on direction from the students, to back off of the computer. They want to go back to book in hand. So we need to consider that. I mean, every year we're spending over $500,000 on new computers. Why? That it just doesn't make sense. And that to me is fiscally irresponsible. So if all of those categories can be looked at and we can see what we have today and what it would look like to do some reduction to see how much money are we able to cut out of what we spend currently, it would help in determining if going back to the taxpayer with a lesser amount is feasible.
Yeah, and that's what we did today. So once Jessica can put numbers together, we can bring that. And we did basically everything you just mentioned. The one thing I would say, just so that there's some clarity, is that we get money from the state of Idaho specifically for hardware and software in technology, and that's the only thing we can use those dollars for. All of our state testing is on a computer. So we have to have computers that work at a high level, because if a kid's taking a test and the computer glitches out, that can have an impact on their score. So we have, because we get the money from the state for them, and you can't use it for anything else, we have a rotation of replacement so that the kids have access to computers that work when they have to take their tests. So that one we did not include, but we did include all of those other items you mentioned.
Well, can you look at what the cost was when we used to have computer labs in every single school that the kids utilized, as opposed to the one-on-one Chromebook, which was from the prior administration's expectation that every kid would have their own Chromebook, that we ended up utilizing COVID dollars for to advance the district into making sure every kid had their own Chromebook?
We can do that, but when we had just computer labs, we didn't have that bucket of money from the state for technology. So those dollars are new since COVID, and those are the dollars that we've continued to replace those. But we can go back and look for those numbers.
Okay.
So all those things that you mentioned are great, but we're still skirting around an issue of staff, right? Salaries and staff is the majority of what this money is. So who is coming up with that plan? Like, is that the principals? Is it department heads from each school? Is it you guys? Is it the district office? Like, who is looking at staffing to tell everybody who's being cut and who's staying? Because that's really where the majority of the dollars are going to come from. And all the talk about all these things is great for cutting slight amounts of money, but really it's the public needs to know what staff members are going to be gone, or at least approximately how many positions per school, because that's what the voters want to know. They need to know what this means to our schools. Does it mean a school closure? No, it probably doesn't. But does it mean 50 to 85 staff members throughout the district? Yeah, it probably does. And parents need to know approximately how many staff members at their school are going to be eliminated. That's what parents and voters want to know.
Our budget for this year, total budget, was what? 61 something? I'm not talking about just the general fund, I'm talking about in its entirety.
Jason, thank you for being man over the microphone.
Talking about 63,989,000. Is that what you're?
Okay, yes.
63 million.
Okay.
Well, almost 64 million.
Okay, almost 64 million. What I said in the very beginning is if our salaries for administrators certified and classified building total comes at a 10% increase to 29 million, off of that 61, we've got $41 million to look at and figure out how we can cut back in that $41 million.
But some of those $41 million are staff. They're just staff from other pots of money. So you have your Title I, that's not in the general fund. So
now I'm looking at this sheet that you gave to us that says that all administrators, certified and classified staff totals for buildings equals $26,644,197. I asked Jessica, and that was last year's, and I asked if I could do a 10% increase on that. Would that be more about what we have this year?
Right, but that's just the people who are being paid from general fund dollars. So we do have staff who aren't part of those numbers, who are being paid out of additional, Jessica's telling me now, I better be quiet.
The building budgets include everybody, whether they're funded from general fund or from federal funds.
Thank you.
Federal funds are restricted,
Right.
so there's not much that I can say, yeah, we can cut that, because if we cut it, we lose the funding.
Right.
So really, we're looking at just the general fund budget, which was $49 million for this fiscal year. We can't look at the other ones.
Except if the other categories are helping to fund this 29 million, we should be looking at the budget as a whole. Are you saying that we don't do that?
We do, but
Okay,
governmental accounting is its own beast. But
I understand
will tell you, the general fund, which is what we're specifically talking about with this levy, doesn't really have an impact on those federal fund accounts.
I understand that. I guess what I'm looking for clarification on, which you just said to Lisa, that yes, this is all of our salaries that's going out the door for the buildings.
For the buildings.
Right, and that's all I'm saying. Go ahead, Brooke. Yeah.
So the sheet that you guys are looking at was a sheet that you guys requested last year, basically to see how much we had spent again per building. However, this doesn't have, it doesn't have maintenance in there, it doesn't have custodial, or it doesn't have transportation. And it only is based off of certified staff in here.
No.
It says classified.
It says administrators, classified, certified.
Yeah, so we are missing a couple of departments, but it does include, all of the federal funding and everything, and with everybody who were paid. But again, Jessica is putting together a sheet that's similar to this, that will include everybody. We just did not have enough time to do that for this session, so she is working on that, and, her numbers will provide a clearer picture.
I understand that, but we just had someone ask, how many staff are we cutting from the buildings? I would like to propose that if we start with 29 million, that the building staff are good, that we're not looking to cut from that pot right yet. I mean, that to me should be an absolute last resort. That's all I'm asking for. Because if the whole budget is 61 million and 29,308,616-ish represents all of the building staff, the remaining 30 million is what we should be looking at, and where we're going to be able to reduce, if we can, come up with a smaller amount to run a different supplemental levy. That's all I'm asking for. Okay.
So we're having a lack of communication again, because I was trying to say that 86% is salaries and benefits, and you're saying it's only 26 million. So we're not even on the same page right now in this moment. There's a disconnect.
I understand that, but this is the information we were given. So that's what I'm trying to work off of. So, and respectfully, like Jessica said, government, school buildings, budgets, and all of that stuff is very convoluted. But this is what we're saying our salaries for administrators, certified and classified is in a $61 million, well, what was last year's budget total? Not this year's. Was it 57? Okay, but we went up to 61, so we would be looking at this year's budget, so it would be off of $61 million.
It was 67 last year.
67?
61 this year.
Okay.
That was mainly a reduction in our ESSER funding because we spent it.
Right.
And it was also the work that we did last spring to cut $2.3 million from this budget
Right.
to try and balance it.
Right.
That worksheet that you're looking at currently, yes, it does include salaries, but it does not reflect benefits. So our general fund as a whole, 87% of our general fund expenditures in fiscal year 24 were salaries and benefits.
So how much are the benefits on top of this 26, 644, 197 that we didn't receive?
Because this report was pulled to show different information that we were asking for at the time. It's not covering the information that you're wanting right now.
Great.
So last year in the general fund, we spent $37,873,000 on salaries and benefits.
What was that again?
$37,873,000 on salaries and benefits. Just for the general fund.
Is that for the district as a whole? I mean, with respect to all of the buildings?
That includes all the buildings, all the departments of the district that are charged to the general fund. That does not include any of the federal money.
Yep.
If you look at the financials, the interscholastic budget, 531000 is all athletics and extracurriculars. So if you're looking for that budget specifically in our monthly financials and our audited financials, that is specific to interscholastics and extracurriculars as asked by
So that we don't have federal, that federal is paid for out of a different bucket. And is it? Question for her. Oh, just one second. So with the number you just gave, so that brings it up to $41,660 with a 10% increase for this year. But you're saying this doesn't include those that are paid with federal dollars. What I'd like to know is what we receive in federal dollars, does that cover it at 100%?
So what was budgeted this year, which I want to remind the board that we did hire back some of those positions that we had planned not to hire back due to classroom sizes. Budgeted for salaries and benefits across the entire district was 44 million roughly, if you're looking at federal funds as well.
And that's for this year?
For this year.
Okay.
Yes. However, that we did hire back 8 positions that we did not have in this budget.
So it's more than the 44 million.
If we set a budget and we had 12 positions that were out of it and we hired back 8, under what authority? Because we approved the budget for a certain amount to just hire without coming to the board and saying, we have to hire these back and getting that approval from the board. I don't understand how that works.
So that'd be mine. So that would have been me. When we talk at the board level.
You're not on.
Oh. Hello. Okay, there we go. When we talk at the board level about the expectation for class sizes, And that budget was based on 4,400 students, we had 4,650. We added, that was my call, so we added the position so that we didn't have extra large class sizes.
So where else did we cut to cover that though?
Well, yes.
This is
This
is my problem as a government accountant, that that kind of stuff happens, that we set a budget and we continue to just go over that budget without talking about how or why we're going over the budget. We were also told that the athletics were, if we could hold them to the line this year, because we didn't last year, but if you look at the information we were given, they were, some of it was under budget. So I'm very confused at the numbers that were given that.
There's no current year budget. There's
No, it's on here.
numbers.
It's on here.
It is.
Yeah, it's on here. It's down in the little boxes.
This is what scares me though, is because not only will we not have 9.52 next year, but we didn't even stay within that last year or the year before, and we keep digging further and further into fund balance.
If I'm looking at this, like the high schools, if we're talking about athletics, like Lakeland High School, we're down almost, I mean, it looks like close to $15,000 from last year. And then,
we asked all
same with,
athletic departments to cut their budget.
yeah, Timberlake, same thing. The only thing that has grown, and I'm not sure, is Timberlake Middle School, their budget grew, and Lakeland Middle School grew a little bit. So our high schools have made significant cuts to athletics.
The reasoning for that, we levied $1.3 million. We're spending 1.4, 1.4 and a half. So we're asking the departments to spend within what was levied because we do not have funding from the state for the additional. That was what the ask was.
Okay.
And they are struggling to do that because while we can say that we have 1.3 million, the actual costs at the end of the year are 1.4, and they're trying to figure out how to cut that extra $100,000 while we're still running the program. So we are meeting monthly with the athletic directors, activity directors to kind of monitor budgets and talk about where we can make cuts there.
Can we go back to
We have a comment back here. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, I'm troubled by the format of this. It feels like there's a lack of trust a little bit. And I would implore you to what Pauline and Laura both said, in that we have great people in our district that do great work, that care about this district, that haven't had a chance to have a voice in how we can help. And we have questions being asked with all due respect that are uninformed questions because it's not your wheelhouse, nor do I expect it to be. I know that your job is to speak for the community, but I feel like there's a little bit of lack of trust of people doing what they need to do, and so you're taking that responsibility on. I would love to see this be more of a shared responsibility so that our community feels like we're all on the same page working together. I feel like that's been a bit of a shift. This is my 20th year here. It has not always been like that. I would love to get back to that, and I would just implore you to a couple of people's points that have already been made to let us have a voice. I have not heard you ask for a superintendent recommendation. That's how it used to work. The board trusted that the superintendent and the CFO principals and the people who were doing their jobs in the school gave recommendations, and the board took those with trust. And I don't know where that has broken down, but it feels to me like it's lacking.
Yeah, I know everybody's in here is upset, but you have to look at the other voters too. Okay, I've talked to farmers who can't farm because they have to go into their savings account. They can't afford to run their farms. They've been here for 40, 60 years, 70 years. Okay, they're going broke. My dad bought his house for $60,000. It's $1.5 million now. He's on Social Security. His wife's on Social Security. You know, I understand. I would write a check if I had the money right now. I'd write a check, but I don't. Okay, we got to think about those people too.
But
Okay.
we're not asking them for more
No,
money.
I know, but I'm just saying, it's one way, it's always one way. Last time the levy failed, it was like 38% turnout. We reran the levy, it passed. This time we have 89% turnout, okay? So am I supposed to disregard 10,000 voters?
But are you supposed to disregard the other?
No, I'm not. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm here, right? That's why we're all here. We can't just go one side or the other. We're kind of supposed to stay neutral. I can't tell people how to vote, you know?
That's what I'm saying. Let the people who know where we can make the cuts, make those cuts.
That's fine.
Because I agree with you. We can't keep going back to the voters, and the voters have said their say. But I also think that we need to say, like, if you said your say, then this is what's really going to happen. But we sifted through this for 2 hours,
Yeah.
and we've gotten for an hour and a half.
And that's how the board works, just like you said. We work on recommendations from the superintendent.
But I haven't heard you ask that. So
That's what we do.
my question. I'm wondering about.
Madam Chairman, may I make a
go ahead.
suggestion?
Sure.
I suggest we move forward with kind of the plan that has been laid out by 2 or 3 or 4 different people here, and I think there's a consensus on it. And that is that we ask each one of our schools, each one of our departments, for their best advice on where they think they can trim. And that once we've gleaned that information and the other information that will come forth from our financial folks, that we try to put a plan together by the board meeting in January.
Okay.
Which then would give us ample time, whichever direction we think we need to go, to carry that plan forward from there.
Okay. Go ahead.
You also said, like, you said to think about those other people, right? But part of that percentage is people who are misinterpreted or misinformed about, like, what this levy did, like asking for more money when you were asking for the same. That's part of this, and you can't discount those people of how many people might vote differently if they knew everything.
I agree.
Yeah. We have a comment here and then up front, real quick.
So what I'm reading here is that no other state spends less on education per student than Idaho, according to a recent report from the U.S. Census Bureau, which surveys the schools, yada yada. It also ranks last in the nation per school for infrastructure. So since we're already last, do you think we're fat and there really is that much to trim from the budget?
But Lakeland spends 25 to Lakeland actually spends $2,000, $3,000 more per student than the state average, and we always have. So the state spends about $8,000 per student, and Lakeland spends $10,000 something per student.
That's why we're good.
I just want to try to clarify what she's saying for those that don't understand. The state of Idaho gives our district enough money for, say, just a number, 10 schools. We have 14 schools because we want smaller schools, so our budget's going to be higher. In their defense, that's what they're saying, but I don't know. That's why it's higher. We have smaller schools, better schools. We need to stay that way.
Right. I agree.
There are some other factors that contribute to that too. We're very close to the Washington state line. If you looked at per pupil costs of this district and compared it with East Valley School District in Washington, we are several $1,000s per student less than what we pay, and yet we provide a better quality education than I would offer.
Okay, so when you guys were talking about the 9.52 supplemental levy, and that being 80% of staffing, that's $8.28 million that you have to cut somewhere. That's just staff out of that 9.52. So you are going to have to cut staff if you don't do this. And so the parents that were asking and the staff that was asking, when you're looking at this reality, you have to consider that you are cutting staff. That's 8.2. Even if you only ran one for 6, we're still cutting staff.
Can you hear me? I love all the talk about cutting and budgeting. I think we should definitely do that. But I think a major problem that we have is, like many people have been saying, is the voters don't know what they're voting for. And you guys are saying that you can't talk to people about it, or
No,
do you not do anything about it? I don't understand.
No, we do. So we would go to, I can speak for myself, go to town halls or, give people the information or the literature, ask, answer questions as they come through. We can't tell them, we cannot say, if you do not vote for this, we're taking this away. Right? We can say, here's what it pays for. Obviously, if we don't get the money, we can't do these things. That's obvious, right? But we cannot literally tell them. So we try to educate the best we can.
Let me ask you a question like this. How was Coeur d'Alene able to do it? Because they put out a comparison between with the levy, without the levy.
They have groups that work with the school district that do a lot of that, but work for them, and those groups can do that.
That is not true. The district, on the Coeur d'Alene district website, they absolutely put out graphics saying this is what it looks like with, and this is what it looks like without.
We can provide information, we can clarify issues, much as we're trying to do this evening. What we cannot do, and we're prohibited by state law, is produce any material that says vote yes for the school levy and use school district funds to fund it. Now, other groups can do that, but as a school district, we cannot do that.
We're not saying to show that you vote this way. What we're saying is giving both sets of numbers so they can see it and make an informed decision.
Neutral
not saying vote
information.
this way, two sets of numbers.
We have a question back here.
Okay, so this levy affects, so I'm 16, I can't vote for this levy, I can't do anything really, but it affects me and my schoolmates and my teammates, and I've heard that we are not going to try to run it again, which boggles my mind because, I feel like we need to get this is everything to me. This is my school, this is my athletics, it's everything. It really matters. And I don't have any say. And from the board, you guys have the power to help fix this.
And you said back again to people like the voters. and the people who can't afford it. But they have skin in the game. They've been doing this for however long, and they've been voting for it, and we don't have that skin in the game. We can't say anything about it, but this also directly affects us in how we function. Like, if we didn't have sports, I can't say how many days I wouldn't show up to school. You'd probably see in like a paper on your desk asking for my credits because I didn't show up this many days. Or like how many kids might have dropped out because we don't have these things. And right now, that's at risk. And what does it hurt to rerun the ballot for the levy besides hurting our pride asking the people again?
And if we rerun the levy for a lower amount, is this board going to go together in different parts of the community? Because I have never seen this board go out to Athol Elementary to reach the no votes out there or to reach the people. So how is this board? Are you guys going to go, all 5 of you, out into the community representing the school district? Because I'm sorry, everybody can hear says you guys are not representing the school district right now. You guys need to come together for the people to help represent, help get rid of that misinformation out there. Are you guys willing, if you were to rerun this, are you 5 willing to go out together out into the community, go into all the different schools to speak to the people? That's what we want to know. That's what I would like to know.
I've already done that.
But
I haven't
not-
went to Apple Elementary, but I went
Individually.
to.
But not individually, as a group of 5,
We
all 5 of
already
you
talked
together.
about the last meeting, having meetings at Spirit Lake and Apple, so people can get more involved.
Can you tell everybody that there's laws that all of you guys need to do about public open meetings? So I don't think everybody knows those.
In order for us to go anywhere together, we have to post a quorum notice that we are going to be there. We cannot conduct any business without the posting of a meeting. So if we were to go out into the community, that would be fine, but we do have to post a quorum. It's not just like we can show up at the school together. It has to be planned.
And
Which,
it's better if there's only 2, because then we can have conversation about something that might come up. If we have conversation amongst ourselves, I know you guys think we're free to do anything. If we have conversation amongst ourselves about something that may be on an agenda or might have to do with the levy, we could be in trouble for open meeting violation. So there's a lot of rules. That's why we went 2 by 2. Because with 2 of us, we can have the conversation, we can answer the questions. But all 5 of us, it gets a little squirrely.
If the students are informed, if the students are taught in each of the schools, I can't tell you, a lot of these students that are participating in sports, that are participating in band, that are participating in acting.
We cannot have students being told in school that they have to go out and push a levy.
But you can
And parents can do that. We cannot do it in the school though.
But
So
if
that's
there's
that's all I'm
materials-
saying.
If we can get materials to get put in our kids' hands, they can go door to door, guaranteed.
Absolutely, if that's what you as parents and the community want to do, we as a board cannot do that.
Can you give us the material to be able to?
We can give you the
The
information.
superintendent can. The superintendent can give you anything. She's not elected.
That's all. I think that's all we're asking is to have the opportunity to hand out a pamphlet or something to somebody's door, but we can't come up with that information ourselves because we don't have all the information. But if we're given that information, then we can get that into other people's hands so they have a better understanding of how the levy works and how it greatly affects everybody.
There was
you have to even do door to door, right? They send flyers out all the time. ECRCC sends you back out all the time in the mail. Wouldn't that be the easiest way to do it?
We did
I don't know how much. We got together, you gave us the information, we made a pamphlet like supposedly Gordon Lay did. Pros, cons, boom, mail it out to everybody.
Absolutely.
I'll ask the booster club for money too. I don't care.
How many
I
mailings
don't
did
know why that.
you? Just one. Just one.
Or we could go door to door, whatever you want to do.
Just one. Just one.
I mean, I feel like my biggest thing is everybody here was upset. I voted yes. I have a son in kindergarten. Okay? I know people that voted no. I don't even know how this tax money comes from the state. How much do we get from the state? How does that work per student? What is the levy paying for? How much is it going to cost every homeowner? Because there's people that own 5, 10 acres. If it's based off of the value of their home and they have no kids in the district, why do you expect them to pay toward that? There's some people that can't. It's hardship. To just throw those 10,000 people aside and say, hey, I get they weren't informed, okay? But why are we here right now when it just failed the last time? And we were upset that it was low turnout and it failed, so we ran it again. And then we were happy because it passed. Now you got huge turnout and you're mad because it didn't pass again. There's got to be a different plan. I sent Quimby 30 questions that I want answered from the board because it's like back and forth. The board's like, oh, I didn't know that. Superintendent, oh, I did this. Well, why did you do that? Then you got the nice lady at the end that has all the numbers and she's supposed to figure it out. Are you talking to her? Talk to the teachers. What do the teachers know that they can make you It's frustrating as hell to sit through here and you guys go back and forth. Oh, I didn't do that. Oh, I didn't do this. Oh, what was these positions? How much did that add to the budget last year? Those 8 positions that were unoccupied, there was 12. Then you add the 8. The board's supposed to know? Did they know or did they not know?
We didn't know.
How much did that cost the district? You know what I mean? Who makes those decisions? Who approves that? You guys, I thought the board approved that. They need to know what's going on, right?
We're supposed to. Yeah.
I can't. Sorry, I'm just sitting through this shit. It's just,
Welcome. I would like to say that there's a group of us that did a lot of what you just said. We did print flyers. We walked door to door. Walked over 500 houses. I put signs in yards. I spent more than 7 hours in the high school at the open house. I went to 7 different schools in the district and talked to tons of, hundreds probably, of parents in the district who lots of them had no idea what a levy was. That was just me. There was 5, 6, 7, 8 of us that did that.
what areas? Where some guys.
Here's the thing, no one shows up to help, okay? So we put out all this information, and the first levy didn't pass, it frightened some people. We showed up, a small group of us rallied, and then a small group of us worked on it. And then the next time, it was just a very small group of us to try to push out a ton of information. So we just need a lot more help from the community because this is frightening. This is what happens when it doesn't pass.
And I totally appreciate that. Thank you for doing that. But the other thing is like, we ask questions. People are like, what is the levy? Like this gentleman, one of the gentlemen here said, they think it's a new levy. It's not. It's the same one we were just paying for the year before. It's just a continuation because for some stupid reason, we have to vote on it every 2 years.
Okay, well, in my opinion, you have to get these board meetings. You have to, as a parent, educate yourself. This is very complicated. Everybody who cares has to educate themselves to the ins and outs of all of it. So when you talk to your neighbor and you call your brother down the street and all this stuff, you can answer these questions. It's never going to be super easy. The district's never going to be able to put out any information that just is a light bulb moment for everybody. There's so many numbers and ins and outs of it. So if we all collectively educated ourselves on the right stuff and got out there, talked to 10 people, it's going to make more of a wave than the 5 of us back here.
Yeah, but we shouldn't be here right now with the way that this was brought about. We should have been thinking of that before. The board should have had some kind of plan last
Well, I agree, but I didn't.
And then they're like, oh, it passed, so we're just going to sit on our hands and wait to see if the next one passes, right? So like I was saying, it sounds like there's no communication between everybody that needs to know what's going on, in my opinion.
So you've been here for an hour and 45 minutes. And it's the same conversations happening over and over. It's not going to be decided in an evening. We all know that. So what is our action step just for the next meeting? Take it out of the
The next meeting will be a presentation of what the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 department sections that I said, you know, tell us what you need to make it work. That'll be at the next meeting.
And does that include staff, or are those just other things that you mentioned in the list?
What do you mean?
Is each sec, like each, you're talking about each building?
She wants to know if that's does that include staff in those discussions?
Well, what I asked for was safety and security, so those persons, the tech department, district office, all the buildings, facility, transportation, athletics and extracurricular, and curriculum. Is that answering your question?
Is that including staff?
Buildings would be staff.
Whatever's in your
Yeah.
building, whatever it takes to run your building. This was nothing more than a fact-finding meeting, so we can hear from you. That was the whole purpose of this, was to figure out, you know, grab what we needed to grab, because we could only talk during this time, and then move forward. So yeah, that would include staff, maintenance, whatever it takes to run your building, everything within your building.
I have a question. Tell me if I misunderstood, but earlier on, something came up about the athletic departments being asked what they could cut, and that they did present cuts, but none of the other departments were asked about that, but yet that's what you're proposing. I just didn't understand. If they already made some cuts, then that was one step. Who asked them to do that?
Well, it was for this year's budget because we reduced this year's budget by $2 million.
All right, but what about the rest of the departments? Weren't they all asked the same thing, or just the athletic department?
Well, it was my understanding that everyone was asked to find ways to reduce, but I do know that some buildings did, some buildings weren't able to. So
the athletic department was the only
athletic
one.
departments were able to, yeah.
But yet that's one of the bigger cuts that you're thinking about taking is the kids' athletics. Is I heard a young lady there and this young man concerned about.
Right,
But
because
that department already has come through for you guys.
we don't receive any funding for athletics and extracurricular. The only funding that comes for those comes from the supplemental levy. So we don't get taxpayer dollars from the state to pay for athletics or extracurriculars. That is unfunded opportunities that we provide to the
I can
students.
understand that, but
Okay.
they've already kind of tried to comply to help you out.
Right?
But I don't think they should take a double hit, do you?
Well, that was for this year's budget that they reduced.
Okay.
Bottom line is, it may have to be reduced to zero because we don't receive any funding for it. We don't want to go there, but we may have to.
What
So
with all those athletic things going on for the kids?
we could go to a pay-to-play position where parents pay to have their kids play sports. There's a lot of money that goes into athletics and extracurriculars, and that was supplemental levy money. It wasn't funding that we get from the state.
I understand that,
Okay.
but also on top of that, you're all talking about people who can't afford to think about a levy being increased and things
Right.
like that. What about the parents that can't afford to let their kids play and things like that?
We need to come up with solutions for that. We need to have, if we are put in a position to have to go to a pay-to-play for students of athletics or any type of extracurriculars, we would need to come up with some sort of a scholarship program or some sort of an opportunity so that we're not disadvantaging kids that maybe can't afford to pay to play.
And you were also talking earlier about the kids asking for not having to have so much with computers and all of that.
Right.
Some of that excess funding could be helped with the athletics. No.
It can't. It cannot. We cannot take any state funding and fund athletics or extracurriculars.
Don't shoot the messenger, but it would be great to put cash on the table, we barely passed this, it should have been discussed then, that there's a clear divide between the north and the south. And a lot of people see it, I'm probably putting a target on my back, but it needs to be brought forward and actually discussed and investigated. If it's something that we find after looking is not feasible, that's fine, but we do our research to know, and we can let other patrons know. But there are 2 board members that have heavy nose and 3 that weigh more towards the yes.
Can you let me know?
Something to consider. And I did have one other question too. Ramona, you keep saying that you go to city councilman meetings?
No, I said I went with the superintendent when we ran the last levy, when they did the outreach programs. So wherever she was out here, that's where I went. And then I do my own outreach. I have other people in the community that call and say, you know, what about this, what about that? I'll send them the information, and then in their group, they disperse the information. But back to your thing about the no. So the net effect of the north precincts was 3,160 no's. So we're 7,000 some hundred short of all 10,000 no's being in the north. And I have those numbers from each precinct if you want them. So it's sort of a misnomer if you go look up the voters' results by precinct and total them. It's just not true. Only 3,000 of them came from the north. So
How many yes votes for North?
There were 1,389.
There we go. There you go. Exactly.
What's that?
Overwhelmingly no.
So overwhelmingly no, from the north.
For your perspective, no.
No, there was only 2 of the precincts voted yes, overwhelmingly. So out of the 4,000, they added 1,400 more back, so 3,000. The net effect was 3,000, 7,325 shy of the 10,000. Hauser, Hutter, Hayden Lake, they're not.
We're just asking about your precincts.
Oh.
Your precincts were predominantly no.
Yeah. 3,000.
So 3,000 of your own said no.
And no, I did the north.
Well, I'm just asking about your precincts.
So I didn't look, everyone kept saying the north, so
Well,
I'm in the north.
we ran out of thought.
Yeah, so I'm in the north, so I told the north.
If I could interject, maybe I'm a little bit more direct than others, but I think, like we're saying, we're 2 hours in, we have people here with very young kids, we have kids here that also have to go to school tomorrow. We've so far heard 2 board members in support of rerunning the levy, but we haven't heard from 3 that have talked about it. And so I think my direct thing right now is you have a lot of people right now who are waiting to hear that if we were to give this is what the district looks like with the levy, this is what the district looks like without a levy, and we brought that to you at the next meeting, and with those cuts that you said from those 8 departments, would you 3 here be willing to think about rewriting a levy, and then we can table what all we're saying right now, because we're open can of worms with a lot of different things. And then we could table this meeting and say, yes, we have some direction moving forward of what we can do as a district.
They come back with some cuts.
Oh, well, I mean, I never had that off the table. I said that in the very beginning, the main thing I heard from my people is they've been asking year over year over year to make some cuts, and there hasn't been enough.
So yes.
So yes. There's some cuts.
Okay, so that's what it will watch.
So if we can present that, what it would look like.
Well, it would be, if I felt that my people thought that would be all right, I could feasibly do
Okay,
that.
and so could we then get that out there on all of our stuff, we've met as a board, where these departments are looking at cuts, we're hearing that the 10,000 is significant, but the 10,000 are yes are significant too. So let's come up with a compromise on both. Here's our cuts, this is what we can do for a cut, we can rerun at a lower rate. Then our board members would be thinking about rerunning a levy, because a lot of us teachers here, I mean, and I don't want to put people on the spot, I worked here for 10 years. My daughter went here, I chose this school district because of how wonderful it is, but my hand will be up if I don't hear about what's happening with the levy to look for another job.
And that sucks, because this is an amazing place to work, and so I think we just need to hear from the board that we are open to this idea of rerunning a levy, potentially, when we get all of these numbers at the next meeting.
Well, yeah, that's what we're trying to do, is figure out what we're doing going forward. I mean, so somehow it became in everybody's mind that the board wasn't running any more levy. Nobody has ever said that. We're trying to figure out how to do that.
Hear from you whether you are willing to run another levy in May. That's what we need to hear.
Well, if there was significant cuts, I already said it at the first meeting, if there were significant cuts and I felt, comfortable that the people felt, yep, they made a good, honest deal, then yeah, I don't have a problem with that. But I'm not gonna tell you, yeah, you come back with, whatever you thought was good, and the people are like, no, that's not good enough, I can't do that.
Ma'am?
Yeah.
I just gotta say that I have heard it said from this board that we weren't gonna rerun the levy. I went back and watched the levy. I'm not saying you, Mr. Quimby.
Okay, well, you
We
said the
have heard
board.
from this board say we're not rerunning the levy. They have spoken, this is how it is.
Yes.
I never
Which-
said that.
That is
Go back and rewatch them.
That is correct. You guys did say that.
At the special meeting that was held after the levy failed, it was brought up to rerun it, and yes, this board said no based on the fact of the significant amount of voters. I would like to say the superintendent agreed that we shouldn't rerun it because 10,000 people, how can you argue with that?
And
So yes,
I'm not
we
arguing
did
with
say
you.
that,
What
yeah.
I'm saying is we are just lied to. We did never say this, but she did say it. Several of you said it, so don't sit here and say you didn't say it when you did.
Can I just say that being in attack mode against each other is just horrible, okay? I teach middle schoolers, and come on, you guys, we all have to come together and figure this out.
Right.
With our current board, with our superintendent, with our DO. I'm sorry, but come on, let's just agree on where we're gonna go with the next meeting, and then just get out of here.
Yes.
Like, this is ridiculous. I can't, it's making my skin crawl. I mean, let's just literally agree on where we're going with the next step and try to keep a positive attitude and quit with the, you're a liar and you told us this and you told us that. I mean, come on.
But it's important to say.
Okay, but it's not going to get us anywhere. We're getting nowhere with this. This is like me dealing with two 8th grade kids going back and forth and round and round. That's where I feel like I'm at right now, is in my 8th grade class, dealing with kids. Okay? I mean, let's just make a plan. And this is not in my nature to even be like this. It's not like me to be like this. So we need a plan to just go forward with the next meeting, and then we all meet and come together and see what we can do. Okay? And then if they can come down, or if we can figure out how we're going to save money. Okay? And then we can talk about whether we're running a levy again. And like Randy already said, we can come up with 2 separate budgets. Everybody was loudly clapping for that one, right? That we can come up with 2 different budgets and see what it looks like, and then let's talk about that, and then let's just go from there.
I think Trustee Quimby Trustee Jones, I think you have a good plan moving forward as far as, let's have the teams get together. I think he's already projected that, so.
I think everybody's on that page. We asked Lisa to do that.
I think most everybody's on the same page with that respect. So we gather input from all constituencies, particularly the staff and certainly the parents and patrons need to have a voice in it. They've had a voice. The board has been diligent in trying to listen to all sides. And, we're stuck with the kind of responsibility to try to weigh things back and forth and then come to a conclusion. But at any rate, to make a long story short, if we can start that process by requesting, as the board chair suggested, information from all the various departments and buildings, and with the objective of trying to have some plans in place by January, and that kind of relieves folks who have some concern about how soon we're going to try to make movement on this, but it also allows us the time necessary to process through whatever plan that turns out to be, and if it includes running of the levy the second time, that's within the time frame that we could do that.
Lisa? Yes, ma'am. I don't know if this is on. if we held a meeting on December 18th, that's 4 weeks from today, would people be able to put together numbers so that we could come back to the table in another work session where everyone can still have a voice as to what we're looking at and what they're considering? Can we do that by December 18th?
Well, we already have.
With what?
Lisa's out.
Oh, that's right, you're out for
Well,
surgery.
Lynn is here. We've already started, and every principal had some voice. Now they will go back and have meetings with their staff and brainstorm with their staff and bring those forward. So the question really is for Jessica, can you attach all those dollar amounts so that we know that we're hitting the mark with the goals for the two plans? Okay. So the answer
4
is
weeks
yes.
is sufficient time for you? I'm not talking.
I just think it would be important that if we do that the directors and the building principals are part of that conversation, so that when we get to the weeds, they really can articulate the pros and the cons, so that you're making decisions with full information instead of bits and pieces. So if we do this, I think we should have it set up so all directors, all principals are a part of that conversation. It will help you navigate making a decision.
I think we move forward with the assumption that each of those responsible administrators would go back and work with their various groups to take that input and then bring it forward with one voice from each
Right.
group.
Right. Yep. Okay, good. Ready? Break.
So,
All right.
what was the date, Michelle? The 18th?
December 18th, it's a Wednesday. We can hold it down south. They want to come north, south. Then if we have to meet again in January, we'll come back north.
Well,
So-
January, we have to be making some decisions, so we
I
have
understand
to
that.
move forward
Mhm.
meeting probably.
Okay.
Yeah, with at least something with the actionable items, whatever that was like.
We could actually make the action in February before rerunning a levy in March.
Well, but we have to have time to get the ballot language to the attorneys and then it has to come back to us, and then you have to approve it again. So we won't, and it has to be to the county clerks approved and ready to go in by March. So the conversation.
We can work it out. We can work it out. All right, so on that note, we'll go ahead and end the work session. I want to thank everyone for their input and contribution tonight. And even those that were frustrated, thank you for expressing that. It's appreciated. It's 8:02 and the work session is over.